this meeting to order, please. March 23rd, regular meeting, and we'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, thank you. Next, roll call, please.
Mr. Hinckley?
Here.
Ms. McGuire?
Here.
Mr. Gajewski absent. Mr. Binkowski absent. Ms. Carrasco here. Mr. Weed?
Here.
Mr. Byer?
Here. Okay, thank you. All right, next item is agenda additions. Is there anyone, including Mr. Stalker, that has something they wish to add to what we have?
The only thing I'd like to bring up is possibly adjusting the time of our work session on the 1st.
Okay.
If you'd like to discuss it now or discuss it at the end, we can do it in other.
Board comment?
Yeah, that would work.
Okay. Fine. Anything else? All right, then we'll move on to public comment.
Keep in mind that that is only an average. Sometimes our wait longer. Minutes, even seconds, can save lives. You're asking the people of our community, a community that ranges in age from newborn to elderly, to accept an almost 10-minute wait time, as well as provide medical assistance without medical training and proper equipment. How can you ask an elderly woman to watch and wait as her husband lay dying, having a heart attack for almost 10 minutes, while asking her to perform CPR for also them 10 minutes? How about asking a young child on the phone with 911 to watch his mom lay dying on the floor? Are you really asking me to wait 10 minutes for help while I try to stop one of my kids from bleeding to death, knowing that help could reach us all sooner? I know firsthand the relief of hearing the Oscoda area first responders sirens within minutes of calling 911 and them walking through my door. I also know the feeling of not hearing sirens for nearly a half hour, only to hear the sirens drive by. Your heart sinks. Then you have to call 911 back and let them know that the ambulance just drove by. Oscoda area first responders has been serving our community for almost 20 years. They know a lot of us personally, as well as the roads, side roads, back roads, trails, etc. This type of knowledge helps them respond quicker to the calls they receive. Oscoda area first responders are an asset to all in this community. I would like to challenge each of the board members to perform CPR for 10 minutes. Not be allowed to breathe properly for 10 minutes. And look into what trying to stop someone from bleeding to death would be like for 10 minutes. Then repeat each task again, only to reduce the 10 minutes to the average response time of the Oscoda area first responders, which I think is, 3-4 minutes? I couldn't get the information. I would also agree that denying even one person in our community the services of Oscoda area first responders is not an option. What about renting them the building for $1? I know that was an issue, the rent not being free. It's illegal. Can we do it for $1? And ask for more help in fundraisers. We have over 20,000 registered voters. We need more public help. We need more in the paper for these fundraisers. You know, maybe some horseshoe tournaments. Ask the Jokers Bike Club. They've been helping a lot of people for many years. There's more options out there to get the help, to aid in the funding. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Cheryl.
Thank you.
Before we go to any other cards, my job is not to argue with people that come up and speak here, but and I'm not arguing. I just, some of the things you said, in my mind, are
Controversial.
not just controversial, not really true. For instance, and I'm speaking for both townships now, but particularly Oscoda, we didn't pull the plug on them. We had the two townships, sometimes with the director of the first responders. We had about 6 meetings. We were, my wife was saying, wow, another meeting about first responders. I said, yep, it's important. And the last meeting, we were led to believe that, this was back in late January, and we were led to believe that they would be good financially through most of February. That's what the director told us. And we had made some progress. We were halfway there. And then all of a sudden, I think, first I heard when I read in the paper that, if I'm right about reading it in the paper somewhere, I found out it wasn't directly from the first responders, that they just pulled the plug in late January. And that whole thing about we can make it through most of February, if not all of February. Bang, they're gone. Whoa, that was totally a surprise to me. So the 2 townships did not say, we don't want you, we can't afford you, we won't give you any money or anything like that. The closest to that was this board said, let's try to get more ambulance service. They didn't say skip the first responders, but they said, let's try to get a little better ambulance service for the people of Oscoda Township and Oscoda Township. And I think we were successful in doing that, and I certainly am appreciative to the Iosco County Commission. The chairman of that commission is here tonight, so.
I agree, we definitely need more ambulance service.
Yep, and so we got a 5th ambulance. I hope it'll, it isn't gonna be 100% dedicated to,
Correct.
That building out by the cemetery, but it should help us, so. But I'm still, a guy that, I'm not giving up on the first responders. The second thing I would say is that, you kind of indicated that these weren't your words, but that we were too cheap to do this. The money was not an issue.
See, and that's what I gathered from the article,
Yeah.
was that the money was an issue. And that, if the community, if Oscoda and Sable can't afford the $15,000, $18,000, $20,000, can't we support them with more fundraisers?
Yeah.
We need to get the public more involved.
We talked to the director about that. He indicated that he had not been right up to par as far as going out seeking money from the community. There were a few automatics, like the United Fund or something like that, but as far as beating the bushes for more money, we urged him to get back into that like he did in earlier years, and he agreed that he could and should. I don't mean the money was not an issue, like we would give them anything, but we were working toward that, and definitely had money on the table and offers and so forth. And the third thing is the building. I think you may know that building where they are housed does not belong to Oscoda Township.
Okay.
That belongs to Iosco County. It is located in Osable Township, but it
Right.
belongs to Iosco. So as far as renting it to them for $1 or something, that's not, we can't do that.
Even cheap, just cheap,
Sure. Yeah. Yeah, we're working on that too. I mean, there was some blowback from the county commission that they were gonna need some money for that, because they hadn't been charging, but they needed money for heat and electricity and so forth. And so this township has been bargaining with the Iosco Commission, the courthouse people, to lower that, and they have been cooperative. They have adjusted the amount, but it's their baby. I mean, it's their building, and so some of the things that people think that like we're in the driver's seat totally, and we are not. But we didn't pull a string on them. They told us they had another month that, they were running out of money, clearly. And then all of a sudden they just walked away before that month even began. So, but I hope you won't interpret that as some kind of argument.
No.
Okay.
And my speech was not an attack against, I just want, it seemed to be in the last couple articles average seem to focus around this 9 minutes, 53 seconds, that
Yeah.
that is an acceptable time. You know, if we can help get them back working for us, our community, they're an asset. That would be awesome.
Well, you and I are together. I really think the first responders, you know, my fellow board members are sick of me saying things like this, but I'm the oldest guy here. I may be the oldest supervisor of all 11 townships. And so first responders are important, and they're important to me. But we need to be able to talk and iron some things out. So.
Right, and I hope that can move forward.
Okay.
You know, and if you need anything, you know, let me know. You know, I can start talking to other people, try and get them involved. We can start working on different fundraisers. You know,
that would be with the first responders.
Okay,
Yeah.
but we have discussed it. You know, a couple coworkers, and I don't remember ever seeing anything in the papers about fundraisers for the OIPOC. And
You may
they
be-
had said something
Yeah.
about the $2,000 that they do. You know.
You may know, if you're focusing on the paper, with photographs and everything, just, I believe it was last Friday or recently, this very room was donated or to the first responders to explain, you know, what they wanted. And and they brought their equipment and set it outside. I think there were pictures in the paper to that regard.
Yeah, I was glad to see that.
And I and a couple of people from Oscoda Township went over to the barn, the building, to see, you know, how they put the stuff away and how much there is and how it fits and so forth. So, you know, the issue is not dead.
Good.
It might be, but I don't think it is.
Oh, I hope not.
So, anyway, thank you for taking the time to share your thoughts.
Thank you.
Do we have any other comments?
We do. Lynn Cruz would like to talk about the bike path.
Good evening. Name is Lynn Cruz, 2105 River Avenue, Oscoda. And I'm a little concerned, and enlighten me, because I'm not sure of all the details of this bike path. My question, a couple questions I have, is why do you feel it's appropriate to go through a cemetery? I feel that that's kind of almost sacrilege. Once you put a playground out there for kids to play and make all kinds of noise, it just doesn't seem right, almost borders on sacrilegious. But I wonder why they chose that path. And my other questions would be, you can take them one at a time if you like, is the money that's allocated, this was a grant, am I right? That they applied for, or someone applied for?
Yes.
And that
Just
money.
applied, that's all we've done. So.
Okay, that's all we've done, or you have done. I'm wondering about this bridge I've been hearing about. How much is that gonna cost?
Any other questions?
That's another question.
He's our if you had any more.
Pardon?
If you had any more questions.
Sure. The cost of all this, and I'm assuming that from what I've read, that Sabo has put in 50,000, Oscoda has put in 50,000, the county has put in something. That's gonna raise our taxes. I don't want our taxes. Is that true or not?
No.
She's shaking her
No.
head no. It's not?
No.
Okay, so it's a grant fund that somehow we're not gonna raise our taxes.
Right.
All right, then you can go back to my original question about why is it going through the cemetery?
Mr. Weed is our delegate to the Bike Path Committee, so this
Okay.
is.
The original draft plan showed the path going along the south side of River Road out to the school. A Oscoda Township representative said they wanted it to go through McQuagg Park. The most efficient way to get it to go through McQuagg Park was through the cemetery. And in order for them, they said they would, in order for them to contribute the $50,000 in match money to it, that the Bike Path Committee had to seriously consider the alternate route. And so the Bike Path Committee did that. And So both sides have been presented, the pros and cons of each option. And tonight is when the board here will decide if we are in fact going to go through the cemetery.
Doesn't this have to go through a vote to the public? I would rather see a table it for now and have more of a discussion on this whole thing. I think the money could, I know it's when they allocate a grant like that, it's for a specific purpose. And it's nice that we have these things, but how does it benefit Oscoda citizens?
Well, I'll tell you how. The money for this first phase, which goes from Riverbank Park to the school, is going to cost $1.2 million. Each township put in $50,000 and the county put in $50,000. So for $150,000, we're going to end up with $1.2 million. And then as the path progresses, this will become more of a noticeable thing. I don't know if you know this, but it was selected by the governor to be part of the statewide bike trail. And it's been proven in thousands of communities that bike paths do help their economy. I've seen it happen in many locations. I've lived in other states. I've visited 49 of the 50 states. I've watched bike paths help out those communities. Right now, we don't have much here that helps out us. We have Lumberman's Monument, which is good for a one-day visit, and that's it. We've got some hunting and fishing, which is a very narrow niche market of people who come just for a few days or a week and then they're gone. But a bike path brings in thousands of people, been proven. I've got data right here to show that. Millions of dollars. One town that my brother lives in, there's an event there they have. Out of 3 events, one of them there brings in, I think it's close to 20,000 people. So that's millions of dollars brought in for that event. My wife comes from a little town that's on the way to nowhere. It gets 100 degrees during the summer there, and they have a Hotter Than Hell 100 event where people bike 100 miles in 100-degree weather. 60,000 people show up for that event, bringing in tons of money for them. So when people come up here and they say, we want the township to do more for us, we want them to fill the storefronts, to bring businesses here, to create employment. Well, the only way the government can do that is by making the area attractive for businesses. And there's only a few things that can statistically are proven to do that, and a bike path is one of them. So for the small amount of money we put in this now, it's going to make a huge impact 10, 20 years down the road.
I think,
Okay. I'm not against the bike path per se. I'm against one thing I wanted to make clear, that our taxes were not going to be increased because of this bike path. No. The other thing is where does it start and where does it finish? I mean, is it going all the way out to Old Orchard Park or the M65? I've heard stories.
The plan is for it to go from Riverbank Park across the river and out to Hale. Once that whole section is done, then there's plans to go from Hale back into Tawas and another connection to go from Lumberman's Monument down to Tawas. So there'll be a 70-mile loop created.
Okay, I've not seen a whole lot. During the summer, we see a couple of bike runs. I don't know if they're races or bike-a-thons, whatever you want to call them. I see some people using it then. But we had a bike shop in town. Apparently, he closed up because he couldn't make ends meet. So I'm wondering if, not saying that you're wrong on the amount of people that would use it, I'm just saying, is it justified this kind of money, whether it be from the county, the state that's allocated? It could be used for the first responders. I mean, it's not earmarked for that, I know that. But I mean, that's what I'm wondering about, why and where it was starting from and going to.
We're not making a trade-off. We're not saying we're going to cut first responders so that we can do a bike path. That's two completely separate issues, both morally and financially. Just saying that this is an opportunity right now because people want to give money to bike paths right now. This is the time to do it so that we can garner all this grant money to make this happen, leverage all those funds so we can put something in here that will help people want to stay here, that will help people want to come here, to visit it, to bring their wallets and give us their money.
There's a race that my deputy clerk was just telling me about. It goes, it's called the Zoo de Mac. And it starts, I'm not sure what city it is, but it's a restaurant called the Zoo something. It starts there. There were 4,000 people that started there last year. They all went into that restaurant because there's a whole little article about it. Ate, drank, whatever, spent the night, hotels, made money. They move on. It's a 51-mile trip. But there were stops along the way for them to stop at where they could go in and have little celebrations, rest up, whatever. They spent money there. There was another little spot. And then once they got to Mackinac, there were parties there. So the businesses do benefit from these kind of things. You imagine 4,000 people, each one spending, say, $20. That's $80,000 that has been generated just by this 51-mile get-together on the bicycles. So it is an actual viable moneymaker for the businesses.
I met with Senator Jim Thomas today, and he's very interested in this bike path. And he said, he has a restaurant in Midland. He said that the bike path they put near his restaurant saved his business. So that bike shop, after the bike path is put in, could have probably done very well. The timing just wasn't in the cards for that.
I agree with keeping the bikers off the highway, that's for sure. But if you're going down River Road, I assume that's the way you're going towards Hale. Or is it going through the woods?
It'll go mostly right along River Road. There'll be some places that'll follow the old 23, which goes through the woods.
What happens if you don't use all the money that's allocated?
All the money.
The grant money. If you don't use it all on this project, what happens? Does part of it go back to the state?
costs are pretty narrowed down that it's all that money's going to get used.
Okay.
Now that if we don't get the grants, the township's not out any money. We keep that $50,000.
Okay, all right. Why is it 50,000? Is that like good faith or something? What is?
Yeah, whenever you apply for a grant, they usually want you to put money towards it so that you have a vested interest in it.
Okay. And one of my main thoughts was the cemetery. I think it would be better to go around it somehow.
We're going
I
to talk,
think-
we are going to talk about that tonight. And,
Yeah, I think it should be thought a little bit more, tabled and discussed more. Because I think that what will happen is you'll have trash from bikers going through there and people yelling and screaming, playing their radios on their bikes. And it's just a little bit, it's a cemetery. Let's try to keep it a little bit more real than going through a cemetery, disrupting people that are grieving, whatever the case may be. I thank you very much.
Sure. I was just going to say that I know you're a resident here, and you probably have seen the amount of people that are in this town during the canoe race at the end. They have to buy gas and eat food and
Hopefully
so
you're
forth.
right.
Yeah.
That-
And there, in the last 2 or 3 years, in conjunction with the canoe race, there is a bike race that starts in Grayling and goes to Oscoda, and that's getting bigger every year, and that's without any kind of bike path. They're just riding on roads that come as close as they can to parallel the river and the canoe race. And as I said, that's getting bigger every year. I have a couple of couples from my hometown up north that come to that, and you know, they enjoy it big time. They come here and spend money here, and it's just a tiny little sample of what we're hoping will happen. So.
And this isn't like some projects in the past that people have contested. This is the kind of project that will bring people in from other states. They would want to come here to ride on that. There's already a bike race that goes along with the canoe race at the same time. I know somebody who comes all the way from Arizona to be in that.
Very similar to the canoe race where they come from Canada and all around. I get it. And hopefully it will benefit. I just want to clarify and make sure that our taxes, because there were some people that saying, I don't want this done because my taxes are going to.
Well-
I wanted to hear it from you that that's not going to happen.
We built a pretty big project down on the beach, which was very controversial, cost over $1 million, but again, grants of $460,000, $200,000, $100,000, you know, and that really pruned down what it cost locally, and that was built in the fall of 2012. Has your taxes gone up since then? No.
I thank you very much for your time.
Sure.
all of you.
Thank you.
Have a nice night.
Here,
Anyone else?
well, we don't have anybody for public comment. I would note in relation to this topic, we do have some correspondence on the board table. So,
Okay.
and in at least one case, the individual who provided it asked that it be read publicly.
Okay. Well, we actually have a packet of 3 letters, and they are all kind of from the same family or household or something, and so, you know, related or so. I will certainly read one, okay? This letter is from Mr. Doug Stevenson. And I quote, "As I have stated to you, I am not opposed to a bike path to nowhere." I think we've heard that phrase before. However, number one, I am opposed to taking this through the Pinecrest Cemetery in any way, shape, or form. I find this to be a very disrespectful thought that should not be even considered in the planning process. Number two, I believe that if people want such a path, they should be willing to pay for it. Number three, that no funds should be taken from our taxes to support any portion of such a dream. I further believe the board's previous vote giving our 50,000, we have not transferred any 50,000. We've just pledged that if this thing gets off the ground, we will be there with that amount, but it has not been paid at this point. Our $50,000 toward this should be rescinded and returned to our general fund. We can't return it because we didn't pay it out. So I know many others feel this way, and I would love to be there, but that is not possible today. Please thank Ms. Carrasco for expressing her opposition to the roading through the cemetery. Thank you sincerely, Doug Stevenson. And then there's a PS here that's quite interesting. I will be watching the televised meeting, and it is my intention to initiate a recall of all those who vote to spend on this frivolous waste of our tax dollars. So there's a bit of a threat there. So anyway, that's one of 3 letters. The other 2 are a little shorter, but the same gist of what's going on. So
I called Doug Stevenson because I too had expressed opposition the first meeting too, and I believe it was covered in the paper. So
okay.
I had a chance to talk with him this afternoon.
All right. Anything else?
No, sir.
Okay. So we move on to a presentation that we have regarding the Sunrise Coast Birding Trail and an event that's coming up, I believe, in May. Peg Ridgway. And Peg, welcome.
Thank you. I think I'm going to stand in front of the podium. Can everyone hear me? Is it okay on the...
If you want to stand right up here and lean
Yeah.
against it.
In 2006, we began the Tawas Point Birding Festival, and May 14th through 17th this year commemorates the 10th anniversary of that festival. And so to commemorate it in a special way, 3 Michigan Audubon chapters got together, namely Oscoda Valley Audubon, which is out of Oscoda and Tawas, and Thunder Bay Audubon out of Alpena, and Straits Area Audubon out of Mackinac, got together and picked out some of our best and hottest birding sites along between here and Mackinac. And we've created the Sunrise Coast Birding Trail. It starts at this Oscoda River mouth and goes all the way to Mackinac City. There are 28 sites along that trail, and the maps have been created. I just received these today. This is the front side of the map, which has explanations of each site and some birds that will be sighted there. The back side of the map is directions to the specific sites. We also have, which I've left at home, 12 by 18 signs that say Sunrise Coast Birding Trail, and those will be put up at the individual sites. People need to understand that Michigan's geography creates something really unique in the fall and in the spring. Because of the Great Lakes surrounding us on all sides, and the birds, we lie halfway between the Atlantic Flyway and the Mississippi Flyway. So as those birds are funneling, particularly in the spring, we have massive migrations that come through Michigan. So what happens, those birds start down in the south, then they have to funnel through Michigan and then spread out as they go to their breeding grounds in Canada possibly, or some of them, this is our destination. So this is not going to cost you any money. It's a new trail. Funding for the metal signs came from the 3 Audubon chapters, plus the Michigan Audubon and Consumers Energy. The maps were created and funded by NEMCOG, which is Northeast Michigan Council of Governments, under a grant that they had received. They also are doing the website for the birding festival, or for the birding trail, and today a DNR, what do I say, press release came out. DNR is also having a birding trail site on their new website, and there are 5 trails, and our Sunrise Coast Birding Trail is the 5th to be created. There will be a few more, but we almost have the entire coastline covered, plus the UP will be starting one soon. So birding trails are the big thing now, and so besides biking trails. And but I just wanted to inform the board that the dedication of this trail will take place May 2nd at Shoreline Park, and I would like to invite all the board members to come. We also have DNR head Keith Cray is coming, Senator Stamas and Representative Patelia, and Jonathan Lutz, who is Executive Director of Michigan Audubon, will be coming. So the public also is invited.
What time?
It's going to be at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. There are 3 different dedications that day up the coast. Alpena will be having one at 10 o'clock, and Mackinac will be having theirs at 1 o'clock also. We kind of spread the media that way. So anyway, you're all invited, and you can come and relax and not have to spend anything. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Peg.
Thank you, Peg.
Okay, next item on the agenda is the consent agenda. And first of all, 3 parts, the minutes of the last meeting, and I believe also it includes minutes from a special board meeting on the 13th, Friday the 13th, which was the occasion I mentioned earlier when the first responders were in this room and made a very excellent presentation. So, anybody have a question regarding the minutes? Okay, hearing none. Financial report to the tune of just under $76,000 since our last meeting. Questions on any item in the financial report? Okay, hearing none. The third part of our consent agenda is informational items. The superintendent has a couple of them, and the community development coordinator has a couple. Latest information about spray pad on the beach. Also, Oscoda has invited us to participate in a tire disposal program. It's their baby. It'll be in Oscoda. They have acquired a grant and then been gracious enough to allow us to participate. And, anyway, any board member have any? I've only highlighted a couple of the four, but okay. Then I need a motion to accept the consent agenda.
So move.
Support.
Okay, moved by Mr. Weed with support from Ms. McGuire that we do accept the consent agenda as presented. Roll call, please.
Mr. Weed?
Yes.
Mr. Hinckley?
Yes.
Ms. Prasko, yes. Ms. McGuire?
Yes.
Mr. Byer?
Yes. Okay, next item on the agenda is the superintendent's report. And Bob has about 4 or 5 items. And the first one is a drop-off and refuse program contract.
Yes, I had attached a draft contract agreement with Sunrise Disposal to my report that went out with the packet last week. We have revised that document. There's a revised version on the board table, and I'll briefly explain what the changes are. Basically, this is intended to implement our drop-off program for this year. You might recall that we had some questions come up about the insurance the contractor had available. We've worked through those, so I'm going to be seeking the board's endorsement of the contract with any changes the attorney might deem appropriate, because it hasn't gone to the contractor yet. The contractor's also provided a memorandum outlining potential collection dates, so it would probably be good to identify a date for the program to take place sooner rather than later, so that we can begin publicizing and so forth. My assumption in that regard is that we would sell permits and approach administration in the same way we did last year. If there is any desire to change that, certainly this would be the time to consider that as well. In terms of the changes compared to the draft in the packet versus the one on the table, there's a caveat added to paragraph 4 under consideration relative to the tire pickup in terms of making it at the request of the township. Thinking there is we may or may not want to do that depending on the grant that we just made reference to on the agenda and the cooperative effort with the Oscoda. Not that we won't, but we won't be obligating ourselves to have that service available. That therefore leads to change in the language relative to consideration to the $32.50 being a maximum amount, not the contract amount. And then at the end of the first paragraph on the second page, the language providing us the ability to modify the scope of services at our discretion has been added, again, primarily due to the tire recycling program. And under term of contract, we've modified that to say for up to 3 years as determined by the township. Those are basically the changes from a narrative standpoint. The insurance amounts were also modified in keeping with the certificate that we provided earlier. So with those changes, I'm seeking approval to move forward, provide it to the contractor. Again, with any modifications the attorney might consider appropriate, and then also for the board's consideration of identifying a collection date. In that regard, the contractor had specified several dates, which I'll get to in a minute here.
I have them right here on paper now.
Yes. Thank you, Jim.
I couldn't resist.
Yes. May 16th, June 20th, 27th, and July 18th. He said he might have some dates before the 16th, but those are the ones he has for certain at this point.
Okay, let's see if the board wishes to participate in this revised contract first, and then we'll pick a date after that. So, any discussion? Does the contract appear to be okay?
Yes.
Okay. Motion.
I make a motion to go forward with the contract as written.
Support.
Thank you. Mr. Weed, with support from Mr. Hinckley. Roll call when ready.
Ms. McGuire?
Yes.
Mr. Weed?
Yes.
Ms. Carrasco, yes. Mr. Hinckley?
Yes.
Mr. Byer?
Yes, motion passed. Now, the dates suggested by Sunrise Disposal are the 16th of May. These are all Saturdays. May 16, June 20, or June 27, a week later, or the 18th of July. Do you think May 16th is too early, that all the people won't be back, or
Yes.
visitors and
Yeah.
stuff?
I think we should wait till July, because our newsletter will go out July 1st.
Oh.
That might give them a couple of weeks too.
Good thought.
There
And
you
a
go.
little bit of advertising before.
Sounds good.
Okay. All right. So, 18th of July. Do we need to vote on that, Bob? Yes.
I'll make a motion that we set the date for the collection to be July 18th.
Support.
Okay, Ms. McGuire motion, support Mr. Weed. Roll call.
Mr. Weed?
Yes.
Ms. McGuire?
Yes?
Mr. Hinckley?
Yes.
Ms. Carrasco, yes. Mr. Byer?
Yes. Motion passed. Okay, item number 2, Oscoda area first responders.
I've got one question though. On the handout here for the refuse, it says up to 4 tires of 20-inch or less in diameter. Is that inside diameter or outside diameter?
Outside, I'm presuming. I can check with the haulers to see what the standard is there,
I
though.
would think
Then that would
20
eliminate
inches.
vehicle tires.
Yeah,
Was that the intent?
I would think.
No, I don't
20
believe
inch
so.
rim, I would
Yeah.
think.
No, that was not the intent.
Okay.
Yeah.
And the only other one on the bottom where the permit application, I see at the top of that page, we put 2015, at the bottom it still says 2013.
So we
So
can-
you might want to change that on the form.
Okay. Okay, Oscoda area first responders.
We had deferred at our last meeting discussion about the first responders and establishing a direction. That was based on an offer from the organization to do a presentation and demonstrate equipment. Several board members took them up on that, including representation from Oscoda Township. That was 2 Fridays ago. There has been a meeting subsequently of the working group with representatives from Oscoda and Oscoda Townships. And one of the key considerations at that meeting was attempting to establish some direction, at least from a guidance standpoint, relative to the position of the 2 townships pertaining to continued occupancy in the EMS station of the first responders. And I don't want to create the impression the county is pressing hard on that issue, but they've asked us for an answer, and it's been some time since the request was first made. Obviously, implicit in answering that question is some direction, presumably, as to whether we're going to continue contracting with the first responders, because they would need a place to operate from. The working group, if we can call it that, it had developed a proposal that was brought back to the board several weeks ago that was based on the concept of extending the first responders contract for 1 year with specified conditions. And I've attached the excerpt from my superintendent's report outlining those, with the attachment outlining those conditions. And the idea was essentially at that point in time, as I recall it from the discussion at our board meeting, our preference would be, from the board's perspective, to approach Iosco County, talk about improvement of the EMS service, which has now been undertaken, resulting in presumably an additional ambulance being put on, at least in part, we would hope, as a result of our inquiry. Getting back then to the most recent discussion with our working group, the direction from them is that if we were going to reconsider that original proposal, the 1-year contract, that an additional caveat should be considered, and that would have the 2 townships pledging an additional $4,000 on a dollar-for-dollar match basis. So in summary, the economics, going back to the original proposal, would be the $8,000 original contract payment, $3,000 for leasing the building based on the current agreement or the space in the building with the county, and then up to an additional $4,000 based on this dollar for dollar match concept, which we would have to flesh out in cooperation with the first responders. In other words, is that new money that isn't being donated now, et cetera. There would have to be some details worked out, but the underlying concept is to give them an incentive to go out and raise money.
So that's, if I can interrupt, that's 8,000 we've been giving them year to year, right? That's not new money, but we
Right.
would continue that. We haven't had to pay rent on that building that the county owns, and, but we're agreeing to pay 3,000 a year for that, from 0 to 3,000. And then $4,000 in addition to that, as long as they can match the 4,000 with fundraising, like you mentioned. Whatever kind of fundraising they can come up with, whether it's service clubs or a cookie jar in every store or whatever, you know. So that's a significant, 8,000 plus 3,000 rent plus 4,000 if you can match it in donations. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Continue.
That's okay. Part of the underlying intent, if that arrangement were to be adopted by both township boards, would be the understanding that that would be the full extent of the commitment financially from the townships. And that's intended to address the idea that we talked about in the past, that this service would be converted at some point to a pay-per-call approach. So that's sort of the compromise. It will help you to help yourselves kind of thing. And then the group would be left with the discretion to allocate the money as deemed appropriate internally. The other perspective on the situation, which appeared to have support at the work session, was based on the idea that the 5th ambulance will improve emergency medical care service and is largely responsive to the direction that was provided from the board and prompted the townships to approach the county. If that view were to be endorsed, then it would seem appropriate that consideration be given to notifying the county that they should begin working with the first responders towards vacating the building. There are certainly other options out there, but those are, I think, from the working group's standpoint, the two primary considerations at this point. So we are basically revisiting where we were a few weeks ago in terms of a decision-making point, now having had the opportunity to benefit from the presentation that was made.
Okay, discussion, thoughts?
Go ahead, Matt.
No, you go. I'll let you.
Ladies first.
Ladies first.
I was at the presentation Friday, and I had talked to Dave Kammer Wednesday night for just over an hour in my office, one-on-one too, and I felt like the whole situation, both situations were really good and helpful to learn a lot of things from them. What I gathered out of both meetings, however, I think in bigger picture, is that the overall ambulance service needs to be improved for the entire county, not just for our area, but everywhere. You know, we pay a millage and different things for that, and maybe it's time for the county to start looking at maybe raising that millage. I don't think it's been changed since I've been here. So, you know, and I don't think anybody could disagree that, you know, they couldn't use it, and they would definitely benefit from it if they did. That being said, I still think the first responders are a valuable asset to the community. So, you know, I'm not opposed to revisiting the scenario that the work group came up with. My only question is the 8,000, the 250, or the 3,000 that we're going to be paying for the rental fee, and hopefully we can work with the county to get that lowered or do something. But in the 4,000 that we would additionally help them out if they fundraised also to match it, we will be splitting that with Oscoda, those figures? Or is that just Oscoda's portion?
I think the understanding amongst the group was it would be split under the current ratio, which is basically 75-25, and I think it probably implied, but whatever direction we would establish in order to move forward, we would need to caveat with Sable's approval as well, since they're a party to the contract, so.
Right. So, as long as it's going to be the proration for all the figures that were announced, I don't have a problem with that, but I think it's important that we still keep pressing the county to give us better ambulance service overall.
I would like to make a motion to table this to the next meeting so that we can have further discussion at the work session about it.
Support.
Okay. Moved by Mr. Weed and with support from Ms. Carrasco that we table this until the next, I don't know how I'm gonna vote on it. Yeah, I do. But, the work session will be in play. Also, we have 2 empty chairs here, and this is pretty important. So, I guess I would like to sneak this in somehow. You know, Jamie mentioned better ambulance service and so forth. But and I agree. You know, everybody wants better ambulance service. But I'd like to point out that when the county agreed to add a 5th ambulance, and I said at the beginning of this meeting that we're not going to get it 100%, but it'll be locally out at the building out by the cemetery a lot more than we have now. But the presentation, I was there, and the 2 medical people, the MMS and the EMS people, made a presentation to the full Oscoda Commission, and they said this is the worst case scenario, but this could cost you $190,000 extra. Most of that was hiring the people, the insurance, the benefits of the workers and so forth. So the county has made quite a substantial investment in this, and I think they should be recognized for that. $190,000 for this additional service to Oscoda and Osable, and they couldn't vote fast enough. Unanimous. Let's do this. So.
I'm not disagreeing with
And
that.
I'm
They're
not-
not.
yeah, I'm not
And I
trying-
have seen them in town, like I mentioned at the previous meeting. I've seen them everywhere ever since we've been talking about it.
Mhm.
Every place in Oscoda, I've seen an ambulance around here. But I'm just saying, I think in general overall, I think for the other townships and everybody else in the county, I think that there's still a lot of issues that I think that need to be worked out, and I think that we could,
Sure.
I mean, we don't have to beat their door down or anything, but keep thinking about it and moving forward.
Mhm.
Real quick, the 8,000, is that part of the 75-25?
Mhm.
Okay, I wasn't sure if our part had been 8 in the past or just 75. Okay, that was the question I'd had at the beginning.
Yep, and then they give us the quarterly reports, and then we deduct it from that amount quarterly.
Okay.
Well, I guess my comment would be, if you want to postpone this, is our next meeting in 2 weeks, sometimes the end of the month to the.
No, I don't believe so.
It'll be 3 weeks.
The guy
3
with the
weeks,
calendar.
right.
Yeah.
Be on April 13th.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. I don't think we should postpone it any further than that, so, I mean, if you think the first responders are important, then people's lives are at stake, the more we push this back.
But the whole situation's a little more dynamic than that.
What's more dynamic than someone's life? But, I mean, the tweaks and the nuts and bolts and the bucks are important, but.
And I think it would be better if we had all 7 members present.
Oh, I do too. So I'm gonna vote for your motion, but I don't wanna vote for postponing it anymore.
No.
I agree.
Okay, roll call, please.
Ms. Carrasco, yes. Ms. McGuire?
Yes.
Mr. Weed?
Yes.
Mr. Hinckley?
Yes.
Mr. Byer?
Yes. Motion passed. Next, Old Orchard Park operations plan. This is a little simpler than the last one.
Yeah, I think so.
I hope.
Yeah, the bar's pretty low. We've attached to the packet and my report a communication from our Parks and Rec Director, to which is attached the Old Orchard Park Operations Plan for 2015. Our lease with Consumers Energy requires that we update that plan annually, and this is Mr. Apsides' effort to do that. He outlines in the memo some changes that he considered to be of substance. Those include increased docking fees, increased cabin rental fees, and creation of a new special event fee. In considering the changes, you should be aware that we've continued dialogue with Consumers Energy relative to unregulated boat dockage and the potential development of additional dockage moving forward. At this point, we're not sure where that discussion is going, but part of the rationale for raising the boat dockage fee is it looks like having additional resources to address that need in the future will be important. That plus appears we're below market. Relative to the event fee, we've had some specific events like weddings, et cetera, take place on the park property. People are not renting a site per se, but they're utilizing resources in terms of refuse disposal, staff, moving picnic tables, all those types of things, of which I'm sure Al can give you the details. But the thought is that it's a private event, and the township should be able to recover some cost in that regard. We don't want to discourage it, but there is a cost involved, and we feel it's appropriate to recognize that.
Okay, are there any questions? Al, is there anything you would care to add? I mean, you don't have to.
You're just making the park so darn pretty and attractive that more and more people want to hold weddings and things.
You
Yeah.
gotta go to the podium. Sorry.
You knew that when you picked that back seat.
No, we're getting more and more weddings, reunions, family gatherings. Every year we're getting, the first year I was there, we had 2. Last year we had about 6 of them. They're adding a big cost to refuse disposal. We have to make an extra, appointment to clean the showers, the bathrooms, the porta-johns, make an extra effort to try to block things off for them so they can have a good day to themselves.
You have to provide tables and so forth?
We do all that. So we try to do our best, but it does incur a little extra costs to us that, it's just one year maybe wouldn't be too bad, but, we're starting to get more and more and more, and this is kind of a good way to book your event kind of thing, so.
Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Mr. Al Apsides, who for 2 years now, 3, has been the director of Old Orchard Park, and this year he's also the director of the community center. So thank you for your input, Al. Do we have any questions of Al?
No, I just want to comment that I know it sounds like a lot when you're raising the dockage fees, but if you think about it, they have it for 4 months and it's like $50 a month after you raise it, so that's still really cheap.
We haven't raised it. Actually, I've had people question why we haven't.
Well, that man that came in the other day, what did he say? He paid like $600, So, and I think he was one of them that questioned.
We did poll other 13 or 14 other places, and we're at the bottom end of the spectrum on that. It ranges from 200 to 500 for a season. I know the season isn't very long, but it takes a lot of work to put those in and take them out. And the damage that happens to them throughout the year, we have to fix that. We've got to pay for that, and it seems like the more they're getting utilized, the more they get damaged. Inadvertently, but it happens.
People should realize that Old Orchard Park is not owned by us. I mean, the land is owned by Consumers Energy. And the boat issue, they would like to see, we're talking about better dockage or some configuration, that they're concerned about people just pulling their boats up to the bank. If you're familiar with Old Orchard, you've been out there, there's quite a drop. And people just pull their boats up and put it on there and then of course walk down the bank to their boats. And consumers, they're real easy to get along with, but they're concerned about erosion and, little footpaths occurring anywhere anybody has a boat. And so, and this is an honest question, I should know. Consumers is probably our biggest taxpayer in Oscoda Township. Would that be true?
In the top 5.
In the top 5, okay. Do they pay taxes on the land that they're letting us have the Old Orchard or not? Do we know that?
I'm doubtful they do, but I don't know that.
Okay. Okay.
Is it the DNR or the consumers that has control over tying your boat to a tree along shore?
It's consumers.
It's consumers' property.
But they also have regulations that they abide by through the DNR and the DEQ, and FERC, which is their biggest supervisor, so to say, which is a little more stringent than maybe some of the DNR rules. FERC is what they have to answer to. I answer to them, and the DNR and the DEQ and the board.
Do you have that many answers?
I have many answers.
Okay. Thank you, Al.
You're welcome.
Anything else from the board? Are we ready for a vote here? I need a motion. Do we want to approve of the new 2015 operations plan?
I'll move we approve the 2015 operations plan.
Support.
Okay. Moved by Mr. Hinckley with support from Mr. Weed that we do approve the new operations plan, which includes, new costs and so forth. Incidentally, this year we will have both yurts will be in operation.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so we have cabins and we have this new housing item called a yurt. You need to go take a look at it. They're kind of unique. So we have 2 of them. Okay, roll call, please.
Ms. McGuire?
Yes?
Mr. Hinckley?
Yes.
Mr. Weed?
Yes.
Ms. Krasko, yes. Mr. Byer?
Yes. Motion carried. Bob's 4th item involves a code enforcement officer.
Yes, there's been discussion recently about this particular function and how best to structure the position to provide for more continuity. We had been gathering some preliminary information with the intent of evaluating various options for restructuring. To put the situation in perspective overall, the police chief had gathered some information from the IMCOL's website. How's that? There are approximately 55 positions that are being advertised currently, of which 37 are part-time for certified officers. The average wage is $15.62 per hour approximately. We've provided a copy of our wage and salary schedule demonstrating the code enforcement position in its current civilian form has a range of $13.64 to $16.48, which varies based generally on years of service. Obviously, if we felt the flexibility was needed, we could advertise at a higher wage than the beginning, but more recently we've been toward the lower end of the scale. To put that in some perspective in terms of the overall economic impact, if we were going to fill the position with a part-time police officer using the beginning pay rate for police officers in a 20-hour per week schedule, the cost would be $18,543 per year. That would compare to $14,185 using the beginning pay rate for the civilian version of the position. Another approach we talked about, in addition to the part-time police officer, was the potential for hiring a full-time seasonal employee on a civilian basis. This would be for approximately 4 months. The idea is that the position would be available for a maximum amount of time when the police officers are least available to deal with code enforcement issues. The summer is their busiest time. During the balance of the year, the function would be absorbed by the police department directly. The cost then, if we used a 3rd-year pay grade, would be about $9,516. There was some discussion about a good fit maybe being a student interested in pursuing a law enforcement career who might come back for a few years, hopefully at least. The intent here would be to acknowledge that maintaining the position on a civilian basis is going to have some temporary nature to it, and basically we would be formalizing that. The key question there is obviously whether you could recruit an appropriate employee to fill the position. We frankly probably would not know that until we tried. In any event, however we were to proceed, if there is a significant restructuring, we would probably want to talk to at least one, if not both, bargaining units. So, we're approaching the warm weather season when code enforcement activity should be ramping up. Given the fact that we're going to need to talk to the bargaining unit or units, I was hopeful that we could at least establish a preliminary direction here. This may be a subject like the first responders that we want to consider talking about at the work session, but trying to establish a direction soon would be a benefit in terms of meeting the demand when the weather warms up.
What's the wish of the board on this? The different options that Bob has outlined? Additional part-time police officer, possible law enforcement college student?
Could we start with like maybe advertising for the college student, that scenario, maybe, and then if we don't get anybody, then try for the other part-time position? Just to get the ball kind of rolling?
There's certainly no downside to recruiting, attempting to recruit in a particular way, and if we're not successful, then move on to Plan B.
Did the chief have any specific preference?
Well, frankly, I think his preference would be for a full-time police officer.
Right.
But assuming the economics of that are challenging, to say the least, I think based on our discussion, he would be comfortable with the seasonal approach.
Of a police officer?
Well, seasonal civilian and the 40 hours approach, I think.
Rather than try and recruit, to actually engage some colleges with that program and see what they offer, a job placement program that those colleges may have.
It might be faster to find somebody that way.
And this- so that we know how that avenue works and if it's going to be efficient enough for us.
Yeah.
Certainly make that outreach.
Okay. You're gonna look for a more of an upperclassman college person, right? I have a grandson that's a freshman in college. I can't imagine him being a code enforcement. They eat him alive. Okay.
Okay. We will proceed on that path and report back.
All right, number 5, electrical service for public works buildings out at the Department of Public Works.
Yes,
site.
and I note our Building and Grounds Department foreman is here if board members have specific questions, but basically previous authorization had been provided to Bill and I to work with Consumers Energy in developing the preferred approach to providing a new electrical service, a modification of the electrical service at the DPW facility, such that we could facilitate completion of the demolition of the lagoon or the tankage for the wastewater treatment facility south of the building there. We now have a proposal from Consumers Energy, which is an agreement for modification of electric facilities. It would involve an expenditure on the township's part of $3,946, which is less, I think we talked previously about the range of $7,000 to $10,000. So I think that's good news. And it's our understanding, based on the drawings, that this would involve removal of the transformer bank behind the building that was problematic for the demolition to proceed. But the company's also asked that the township grant an easement to facilitate installation of the service, and that's to a large extent what brings this back before the board. We had not anticipated that. It was not raised previously, so I thought it appropriate to bring it back. We've reviewed the documentation. There's one minor correction that needs to be made in one of the legal descriptions. But other than that, we are in a position to proceed, assuming that the board is amenable to approving the modification of electric facilities agreement and granting the easement that Consumers Energy is seeking. Apparently, there was no easement granted when the service was originally installed, so they're seeking to plug that gap, so to speak.
Is there any downside for us to granting this easement?
Well, it does encumber the property for the specified purpose. You can't build under the, on the property and those types of things. So, yeah,
Do we have any say-so as far as where this easement is located? Or do they just pick the most direct route?
we might have. My understanding is that from our perspective, it is acceptable and it's basically intended to facilitate the utility plan that was developed. So unless the utility plan was going to be modified, there would really be no pressing reason to modify the easement itself.
Any input?
It's just a requirement in my contract with Casey Lee. It's just a requirement that Consumers has in order to get onto the property, to do any repairs or anything like that. Back in the 70s, I don't think we had a lot of easements for our sewer system. You know, they just didn't do it. But now, you know, with today's, the way things are, they want an easement. And all it is, Jim, is where the wire goes in, just if they have to do a repair, they want to be able to have access to it.
Right.
That's all it was about.
Do you foresee any 5-10 years down the line when probably neither one of us are going to be making these decisions, but do you see?
No, I don't see any reason that it's, where the line is, it's not a place you would build anyway. It's right next to the road, so it's
Okay.
to the driveway coming in.
Okay. Any other questions of Bill? This is Mr. Bill Hamlin, our DPW director. I'm into introductions tonight.
See that?
Thank you, Bill. Okay. Are we ready for a vote to execute this agreement?
I'll make a motion that we execute the agreement for the modification of the electrical facilities and for the related easement document.
Support.
Okay, the motion is made by Ms. McGuire with support from Mr. Hinckley that we do go ahead and execute this agreement for modification of electrical facilities and the easement. Roll call, please.
Ms. McGuire?
Yes.
Mr. Hinckley?
Yes.
Ms. Carrasco, yes. Mr. Weed?
Yes.
Mr. Byer?
Yes, motion passed. Okay, Bob has a couple of informational items. First one deals with possible fees or charges linked to special assessments.
Yes, we had talked about this, I believe, last fall as a potential means of covering some of the cost related to establishing a special assessment district. We had done some research, but basically what I've summarized here is input from legal counsel indicating that if we were to head down that path, that an administrative charge would be preferable to charging interest. Specifically, the norm tends to be a range of 1% to 5%, depending on what your costs are. You can consider interest as part of that calculation, but normally, in Rob's experience, folks are charging towards the lower end of that spectrum. So, given that information, if we were going to consider starting to include administrative charges in the cost calculation basis for special assessments, we would probably want to establish some kind of a standardized approach so that we were consistent in doing that. I'm not asking for the boards to take action this evening, but given that we will be doing some special assessments moving forward, it's something for folks to think about and then maybe revisit in the not too distant future in terms of developing that standard protocol and policy if we're going to move down the path of charging for administration.
Possible work session topic. In work sessions, we cannot make any final decisions, but we can get close and then act on it the next regular meeting, so,
We could do that.
yeah. Okay. Next item, informational item, an update on the new deck / patio for Warrior Pavilion.
Yes, the direction at the last meeting had been to switch plans here effectively and look at constructing a concrete patio or deck as opposed to the wooden one we discussed before. That has led us to consult with the building department and the engineer. It appears as though to get a permit and solicit bids, we will need to modify the engineering plans. That's going to come at a cost of about $700. We've authorized those changes to be made. The good news here is that preliminary feedback from contractors indicates the cost of the project with the revised scope of work is likely to be substantially less than the one bid we received before. So we're moving forward on that. And then finally,
Before you move, what was the original bid for the cement, the concrete slab?
I believe it was approximately $28,000.
And what would be, in your mind, I know you don't have the exact figure, what would be a substantial reduction?
Half of that would certainly be substantial.
So 14 maybe? Maybe.
That would be on the optimistic.
Right.
Okay. Do you know if the engineer is going to design this thing with railings?
We did not discuss that.
I don't think so, Jim, because it's not gonna be high anymore.
Yeah.
It's level.
Plan's gonna
It's
bring
gonna be-
the
it's gonna be level.
ground up to it.
Flush with the ground?
Yeah.
And then is the ground gonna drop off very soon?
No, it's gonna be all sloped from there down.
That's what I mean.
Like a
Is it gonna
yard.
drop off from the edge of the?
Gradual
No,
slope.
it'll be-
Gradual.
The ground will be built up around the outside edge of it, and it'll be a lawn.
Okay. I'm really concerned about the liability of somebody. Wedding reception, people have a few drinks.
It'll be flush, Jim.
Okay.
It's gotta be
Some-
raised.
Somebody
it's gotta
could
be raised
own,
about
somebody
12
could own the
inches.
Warrior Pavilion if they fall off and we don't have a railing there. Okay. All right, so $700 to engineer this.
Yes.
Right. I still think that that building has a great appearance as a rustic wood, I hate to see us go to a concrete slab, but
I'd love to see it.
I think you're gonna
I
be
know.
happy when you see it.
maybe. But, okay. Storm sewer update on the former base.
Yes, this obviously deals with an update relative to the blockage at Mission and 8th Streets. We had, or F&V, our contractor, had attempted to utilize our equipment and the new auger to address the blockage. A week ago Friday, the auger got caught not too far from the manhole on a misaligned pipe, so they had to terminate the work. It did appear, on a positive note, that the work they did accomplish lessened the blockage to some extent. So that left us with looking towards hiring a contractor. The first contractor that we had contacted, the most recent one we used, provided a quotation that was much higher than we had anticipated. So 2 additional quotes were gotten. We have ultimately executed a proposal with RB Sat Kowiak, which is included in the packet. It has a caveat that we would not spend more than $8,000. This is an outfit that the Homeowners Association has dealt with and has some confidence in. After discussing the project with them, they seem pretty confident they could succeed fairly expeditiously. So it's a difficult thing to evaluate, frankly, in terms of the best bang for your buck, because the hourly rates vary, but obviously your final cost is greatly impacted by how efficiently they get through the blockage. So there's a value judgment that's being made there. Originally, they were supposed to be on site this morning, but they discovered a problem with a Vector on the way here that they were going to use. Had to take it back to the shop, so my understanding is they're going to be back tomorrow. We've also approached the road commission as to the potential for sharing in some of that cost, since some of the pipe in question is in the road right away. There appears to be a willingness to consider that, not until they have a board meeting, which is likely going to be after the fact. So in that instance, we would be asking that they consider reimbursement of some type. And in a related vein, we did get feedback from the Air Force relative to my letter of January 2014. They've essentially reaffirmed their position that they cannot / will not do maintenance or participate in cost sharing, and indicated that from the township's perspective, we should do what we need to do in terms of taking the best steps to maintain the system. So that leaves us with considering some of the options we discussed before, including potentially strategic abandonment. So we will initially be dealing with the blockage and then talking moving forward about the larger issue and how it might be best addressed.
You mentioned the homeowners association has had good luck with Satkowiak Company. What kind of project would the homeowners association have that would even be remotely similar to what our problem is?
I believe the association owns the sewer leads going to the units.
Okay. Good. Yes. Okay. Well, that makes sense then. Yes.
Now, Bob, you said the pipes were misaligned. Is that the way they were originally laid, or have they slipped out of, do we know?
We don't know. It's difficult to imagine they were placed that way, though. But we really have no way of knowing, unless there was some camera work done in that system several years ago, so possibly that was cameraed then, and we could compare it to now, because part of the pricing here for the new contractor is going to involve a camera work.
So I guess getting to the bottom line of my question, would that flow of water been a cause for that pipe to become unaligned?
It could, in terms of if there was some kind of a breach, the volume of water going through could potentially exacerbate it. That's probably more of a question for an engineering firm, and that's part of the reason that if we're going to do the abandonment concept, we might want to consider it. But also, roots pushing through aggressively could force some type of a breach that, with water flowing, would become exacerbated over time and cause a pipe or pipes to dip.
If there existed a small leak at a joint with some water seeping into the ground, and the Air Force, the water largely comes from Air Force projects, right? And it comes at quite a powerful current.
The flow is significant, yes.
Yeah. Could that undermine the pipes and have them slump underground and thus become misaligned?
I guess I wouldn't want to speculate. It's just sort of my opinion at this point, but we're pretty confident that the problem is roots, and it would seem a logical thing to then take the next step and say that the roots are significantly exacerbated by the constant presence of water in the pipe.
But the Air Force took 14 months to respond to your letter of January 2014, and then the letter just washes their hands of any responsibility.
That's
Pretty much it?
pretty much it.
Okay. Any further comments, questions? All right, then let's move on to the Community Development Coordinator.
Thank you.
Ann Richards is our Community Development Coordinator. She had a couple of informational items that we referred to. First action item is the Oscoda River Run use of Riverbend Park.
Thank you. Recently, I was contacted by Jeff Rush, the Oscoda area school varsity girls and boys swim and dive coach, in regard to having the 3rd annual 5K fun run walk that he's coordinating as a fundraising event for the program. The event brings forth a request to utilize Riverbank Park on Saturday, April 25th as the start and finish of the event. As you may recall, a similar request was made and granted for the last 2 years. Last year's event drew in over 150 participants, and it's anticipated the number will hopefully increase this year based on positive feedback from the last 2 years. School administration has confirmed that the event would be covered under their standard liability policy. The event is prior to the Memorial Day weekend, and with the estimated time frame of less than 4 hours, you would speculate that it would minimally affect the accessibility of the park to the general public.
Okay, so this is the 2nd or 3rd year?
This is the 3rd year.
3rd year? Okay. And we haven't had any problems?
No.
Previous? Okay.
No.
I'll move we authorize the event.
Support.
Moved by Mr. Hinckley with support from Mr. Weed that we do authorize this event. Roll call, please.
Ms. McGuire?
Yes.
Mr. Weed?
Yes.
Ms. Carrasco, yes. Mr. Hinckley?
Yes.
Mr. Byer?
Yes. Motion carried. Next item, birding trail, a logo that is tied into the signage for this?
Correct. This evening, we heard a presentation in regard to the upcoming ribbon cutting ceremony for the Sunrise Coast Birding Trail. This item directly relates to that presentation. I met with Peg Ridgway earlier, or I should say last week, in regard to providing signage for the destination of Clark's Marsh, which is located on the Wordsmith District. The township has Clark's Marsh identified on 3 of the wayfinding signs located on the district. As Clark's Marsh is already identified as a destination on the 3 wayfinding signs, the group doesn't feel that it's necessary to install the 12 by 18 inch signs that she referenced but forgot to bring, but they're bright orange at these locations. Instead, they would like to add their logo decal to the existing signs. They would then continue to work with the county, Forest Service, and Airport Authority for additional signage as the trail continues along Perimeter Road to the marsh itself. I did have a copy, black and white copy in your packet of this, of the sticker, but that's what it looks like. So that's orange is the color that's identified for our area. So they would like us to allow the placement of these orange logo stickers to the 3 existing township wayfinding signs. The placement of the sticker would be adjacent to the binoculars currently located by the Clark's Marsh. I don't know why I can't say that word tonight. Clark's Marsh destination. 2 signs are located on F41 just north and south of Skill Avenue entrance, and the third sign is located on Skill Avenue just before you turn to Perimeter Road, right by the Circle of Flags. If the board is inclined to approve the request, I would consult with the sign fabricator, which was Valley City Sign, in regard to the prep of the sign to ensure proper adhesion. Because all the letters on there are decals, as it is, and could be removed and added. When we've had to add things in the past, they've recommended using alcohol prep pad to clean the surface, but I would consult with them. So.
I'll make a motion that we put the decals on our signs.
Support.
Okay, motion by Ms. McGuire with support from, I believe, Mr. Hinckley, that we do go ahead with this logo attachment to our wayfinding signs. Roll call, please.
Mr. Weed?
Yes.
Ms. McGuire?
Yes.
Mr. Hinckley?
Yes.
Ms. Carrasco, yes. Mr. Byer?
Yes, motion carried. Next item, Pawnee Medical Center, possible new tenant.
Okay. I've been working with the executive director of the Osable Valley Community Mental Health Agency, and I'll refer to him as Osable Valley, over the last several months in regard to potential space within the Pawnee Medical Facility that would meet the agency's need to provide additional office space for their staff and clients. This would be additional space. They currently have space along Cedar Lake Road. It's quite a large facility there. They're not going to be vacating that facility. They're looking to actually grow. So they actually just did about an $800 and some thousand remodel on that building. So very recently I was given the go-ahead to move forward with preparing these lease documents to secure 2 suites within the Pawnee Medical Facility on behalf of Osable Valley. The space that they would like to pursue is made up of 2 separate suites. The smaller of the 2 is vacant and was last occupied by healthcare recruitment, And the larger suite is partially occupied by a tenant that has been renting on a month-to-month basis since the end of 2013, and as well as a small room is being utilized by United Way. The total area in the proposed lease of the 2 suites is 4,250 square feet. Based on Oscoda Valley's aggressive target move-in date of May 1st, and they would like some renovations to start before that, so in mid to late April. And my assumption that the board would be inclined to move forward with approval of this new lease. I've had preliminary dialogue with the current tenants that would be affected, as well as a request has been made to the township's attorney to draft the appropriate lease documents. And a copy of that lease was attached to my report as well. So if approved, based on the current lease rate of $8.50 a square foot, this lease would represent an annual lease revenue of $36,125.
Comments from the board?
Good job, Ann.
Yeah, 36,000. And
Yes. Yep. The smaller, the tenant that's been on a month-to-month is Alpina Urology. They've been there for a long time. He has sold his practice in Alpena, but just has been operating on a smaller scale. So I'm working with them to possibly relocate into a smaller suite, but I don't know if that's going to work or not. But either way, they've been made aware. And I do have another space for United Way to move into. So.
Okay, I would make the motion that we go ahead with this action of working out an agreeable lease. And this lease would be put before our township attorney? Is that part of the deal?
He drafted the
drafted
lease, correct.
Okay.
Support.
Okay. Motion by Byer, support by Weed. Any further discussion on this? Roll call, please.
Ms. Carrasco, yes. Ms. McGuire?
Yes?
Mr. Weed?
Yes.
Mr. Hinckley?
Yes.
Mr. Byer?
Yes. Motion carried. Final item that Ann has, VA clinic expansion.
Correct. Based on discussion that took place at the January 26th meeting on how the board wanted to handle the VA expansion project as invoices came in, you did request that I put them as action items on my report. So with that direction this evening on my report is a request from J.E. Johnson in the amount of $11,882.80 for work completed to date. That represents payment of 3 vendors. And just to update you, the VA has officially, as of Friday, signed off on the floor plan. It's been a back and forth for the last couple months. So the bid documents will hopefully be going out in the next couple weeks. So we're moving along.
Okay. And you are satisfied that this payment of $11,882, as far as what it
Right, it actually has a small payment to J.E. Johnson, Sagasser and Associates that did the environmental work that was done to date, and the civil engineer that was consulted, which was Russo Engineering. So.
Okay.
I'll move we approve the payment.
Support. All right, that's Mr. Hinckley and Mr. Byer.
I just got one comment before we vote.
Go ahead.
Are we gonna, I liked the continuation sheet, the certification for payment. Are we gonna get that every time?
Yes.
That it kinda outlines and says what
Right,
work's been done and
yes.
stuff?
Mhm.
I thought that was really helpful.
Mhm.
I agree, because I didn't see it right away, and I thought, come on, explain what this is for, you know? And then
You
Jamie
mean the
pointed
long,
out-
this?
Yes.
Okay, right,
Yes.
and that is going to actually, once it goes out to bid and the real numbers come in, those figures will change from what you're seeing right now. This is all based on the estimates
Right.
by construction.
But I just liked, cause it would show like what percentage we
Exactly,
have paid
yes.
and the balance,
And the
that type of
retainage
thing.
there.
Right.
And then my office is keeping track of all this as well, so we have a lot of checks and balances between my office, Jamie's office, and the construction manager. So.
Okay, good, good, good. We need a vote, eh?
Mm-hmm. Ms. McGuire?
Yes.
Mr. Hinckley?
Yes.
Mr. Weed?
Yes.
Ms. Carrasco, yes. Mr. Byer?
Yes. Okay, next we go to, we have one In the area of resolution and ordinances, we have one item, Resolution 2015-07. And Bob, you want to give us a little rundown of this?
Yep, yes, certainly. This resolution is intended to bring us into compliance with Public Act 152. That's the public act that requires public employers to establish an option for healthcare compliance. That can be the hard cap, which is what we're doing now, adoption of an 80-20 cost-sharing model, or opting out of the act, which is what we have historically done. In preserving flexibility, we have 2 labor contracts that are going to be coming due before the end of the year. Under that scenario, we have historically, again, opted out. It doesn't mean that we would not apply the hard caps, but the underlying intent is to allow us some maneuverability in the event the collective bargaining process dictates it, or financial prudence or whatever other considerations may come to the forefront. So this resolution as well would affect the township in terms of opting out or signifying that we are going to be selecting the opt-out option for the period June 1, 2015 through May 31, 2016, which is our medical plan year. So we're ahead of the game by a fair amount here, but prior to June 1, we will be required to select one of these options.
Further questions regarding Resolution 1507?
I'll make a motion that we approve Resolution 2015-07.
Support.
Okay, Ms. McGuire with support from Mr. Weed. Roll call, please.
Mr. Weed?
Yes.
Ms. McGuire?
Yes.
Mr. Hinckley?
Yes.
Ms. Krasko, yes. Mr. Byer?
Yes. The resolution is adopted. And now we move on to other, the almost last section of our agenda. And the first item deals with the bike path.
We have a letter dated March 17th sent on behalf of Oscoda Township to myself and the board requesting that consideration be given to granting permission to run the Oscoda Exploration non-motorized trail through Pinecrest Cemetery. Along with the letter, there is a route map that was included in the packet demonstrating the exact location that the path would run. And also there is a communication from Spicer Engineering which follows up an evaluation of this alternate route, indicating that it would be feasible subject to all the affected property owners granting permission, of which we are one. This would presumably require granting an easement, and if we were to proceed in this direction, also consideration potentially of some kind of an agreement or letter of understanding as to maintenance of the path, etc. Going back a few weeks, you might recall when we thought this question might first come up, staff had undertaken an effort to determine how other communities deal with this type of a pathway scenario. Unfortunately, we have not been able to find clear guidance in that regard. It appears to be somewhat of a unique situation. That's maybe not good, maybe not bad, but we had hoped that we could talk to some folks and find out what their experience had been, but there aren't a lot of comparable situations to rely on. So we're left with needing to deal with the request, as I understand it, in pretty short order. I saw a communication earlier today and spoke with Spicer, and they're indicating they need a decision by tomorrow, basically. They're working on the same grant writing timeline that we are with the trust fund.
Yeah, Aaron, you're our man on the bike path thing. What do you have any thoughts? It is a tough one, I know that.
Well, you know, as I said in the work session, having some path is better than no path. And, but in the last 2 weeks, I have received quite a bit of negative feedback regarding the path going through the cemetery. And quite a bit, meaning like 30 people.
That's quite a bit. And may I ask, are these just people you run into in random situations, or they're calling your house?
No, they're not calling me, but yeah, they're
Yeah.
people that I run into. And not all of them were concerned about just the cemetery, but they were concerned about it running through the back of the neighborhood also. But a big portion of the concern was about the cemetery.
Aaron, are they aware that that is a road going all the way through there?
It used to be a
It's an
public
abandoned
road.
road?
I think a lot of people have forgotten about that, or even know that it's two separate properties.
I have to agree 100% with your speech that you gave. I've been to bike paths, the rail trail in Midland. I've been to the one in Harbor Springs, through Petoskey, through Traverse City. I have never met any people that were more pleasant in my entire life. They're always just, they're not loud, they're not noisy. In fact, you don't hear anything when you're riding your bike. The path through the cemetery is basically a road. They're not gonna be invasive on any graves or anything like that. It's really, and it'd really be much prettier than the road going along River Road, you know, going across each driveway.
Doesn't involve any weeding through the cemetery?
No, not at all. It's a straight shot around the chapel, Jim. It goes around the back, goes through the back gate. In fact, it's a no-brainer to me. In fact, there's a lot of people that park out there. There's a lot of people that walk every day. And I did get some feedback from the funeral directors, but they didn't know where they heard it from, that they recommend it. You know, that there's eyes in there, you know, you don't get vandalism, you don't get, I like seeing the people out there, the people walking their dogs. People come out there every day and park and walk their animals. They walk through the cemetery to get, you know, time.
And since your guys take care of the cemetery, what have they noticed?
Nothing. You mean as far as, I hear people saying trash, nobody does that. I've never seen anybody take trash out there and dump it. I have seen kids playing in the cemetery and damage headstones and stuff. I've seen that quite a few, 44 years of it. But never have I ever, can I see anything detrimental about a bike path going through there? I don't see that.
Some of the concern, though, was when there's burials going on, when the families are there grieving and people are, in their mind, going through, disrupting their burial. That's the comments I've heard a lot.
If it was right next to where that was, you know, like it was a grave near the road itself, maybe, but.
There is a fence.
Yeah, it's a fence on both sides, and then
Separate.
yeah, it separates it from the cemetery itself. Just the back section, would you be anywhere near a grave?
But when you're dealing with a bike path, you're dealing with several people that have not been through there before. They're carrying food, bottles, plastic water.
I don't see that on any bike path I've been on, sir. Never have I seen anybody disrespectful to the property.
Okay,
Ever.
I'm picturing kids coming through there, riding their bike, playing their music.
Well, that happens
Somebody's
anyway.
grieving, you know, you can't really.
They can drive their car in there now and do it.
Right.
There's
Well-
also people that walk through there, you know.
Yeah.
Walking, yeah, I can see walking, I can see that.
I've had a few people from the subdivision that have said that they're not really crazy about it going through their backyard and we're, you know, cutting into their privacy back there and the issues with that.
It's public land.
It's public land, it's a park.
Yeah.
They have holes in their fences all the way along, so they can drive back there.
Yeah, they want to own it.
I still like the River Road idea. It was a good idea when it was the safe routes to school, and I think a lot of people are still gonna use it regardless, instead of going through the cemetery and around through the woods.
Yeah, is there any other path that you have explored to get around, going around the cemetery and through?
Well,
I've
there's
had a
another
couple
one going all the
options.
way around McQuaid Park. I don't know if you're familiar with where that is, but it would be quite a bit more lengthy and more costly to Oscoda Township if, to develop it. So if economic factors are an issue, that would be kind of important. In talking with some Oscoda officials about this also, again, economics, they're thinking that if it goes straight down River Road, there are, let's say, 28 driveways there. And the bike path would be possibly damaged by snow plowing all winter long. And I don't know if anybody, Aaron, you can tell me, have you guys ever talked about maintenance of this and who's responsible?
We talk
Yeah.
about maintenance quite a bit because it's everybody's concern.
Yeah. And would it be the township where the problem is? They maintain it?
Would it be plowing that in the winter?
No. No. I'm saying if it goes down River Road, which I think you would like, stays out of the cemetery, and it goes right down. There are 28 driveways, 28 homes there.
27
On the
properties.
south side.
Yes, and so people either themselves with snow blowers or they hire somebody to plow their driveways. How much damage are they going to do to this bike path that's out at the end of the driveway? So
Well, you
Well,
got
they don't
you
know
got
that-
the same thing the
Yeah.
other way though too,
Yeah.
with the ORVs and the snowmobiles in the wintertime going through McQuaig.
Well, they have their own, they have a
Motorcycles.
dedicated path though.
That doesn't mean they're gonna stay off that one.
The damage to the bike path would be the same damage that would occur to their own driveways.
Yeah.
Yeah, but we're not replacing their own
asphalt.
driveways.
Yeah.
Well, they're not either.
Repair the bike
If
path.
there's damage done, who's gonna maintain that? I'm not a friend of the whoever.
And Jamie, really, if I may,
sure.
historically, that the safe routes, the bike path was a good idea, but the route and the complications of that particular concentration of residences kind of kiboshed it at that point because of at that time, we couldn't put it together.
Right.
And we couldn't solve the problems posed by that path. So that's the reason we in Oscoda Township looked at that route and tried to come up with some alternatives and ended up with two. One, as Mr. Byer said, snakes through McQuaig Park is a little bit longer, is a little farther south, so that's what adds the length, is just the southerly aspect of that. My associate here, clerk of our township, Kelly, who's a landscape designer, has a lot more technical knowledge than I do about such things, came up with the idea of the cemetery. And my knee-jerk was honestly very much like so many I've heard, which was, oh my goodness, we can't do that in the cemetery. And I agreed to take a ride out with her one day and check it out, and I have to tell you that it became kind of appealing to me too. It's, the route already winds back behind Ace Lumberyard onto Adams Road. That's already in the draft plan. So it's a straight shot across the railroad tracks into the cemetery. And like Bill said, a straight shot through to the rest of that path, which then leads to the west to Grass Lake. As far as the disrespect aspect of it goes, I had to consider my own personal history. And probably a year after Bill started his 43 years, for 43 years, I've been visiting in that cemetery some of the people I love most in this world. And because I was so young then, I started doing it by bike. And I honestly, in those 43 years, traveled through that cemetery more by bike than I have by car.
Well, what would happen if they didn't put a bike path? When I say bike path, I mean blacktop, wide, so on. They don't need it. I mean,
No, it's
people
already
ride-
there.
It's already-
It's already there.
They're gonna share, their plan is to share the road. At that point, it
It's
would
already
get
being
shared.
Sure,
Yeah.
and never do I intend or create any disrespect by riding a bike back there. There are signs already directing people what to do with their dogs, and I don't think a bike is
any more disrespectful than a dog, you know, in that kind of surrounding. But it's really challenging. Most parts of the bike route that I've seen don't have this trouble. They have either only one possible viable, you know, option, or it's so obvious because it's by the river or something like that, that that's the only option there is. No-brainer doesn't apply to that half-mile stretch or less from the tracks to Grass Lake Road. It's really been taxing to try and figure out how we can do it. The River Road is more central. The River Road route is more central to traffic, and it's more obvious, and that appeals to some people.
Creating a situation like that, the more people are going to be using dogs, more people walking their dogs, stuff, and they constantly get a problem later on. But they want to
I'm thinking, you know, they're concerned about trash and stuff like that. The very fact that this cemetery is going to be at the beginning or the end, whichever direction you're going, and I'm thinking either way, people aren't going to have empty bottles and empty stuff, because if you're just beginning, you haven't availed yourself of the goodies that you brought with you. And if you're coming from the west and you're almost at the end, I would think that you've either packed that empty stuff away in your bike or, heaven forbid, thrown it away somewhere else. But so I'm not too concerned about, you know, a lot of empty stuff.
Crazy concept, you could put a garbage can somewhere along the way. Here's an idea that people use,
Yeah.
a garbage can.
Are you going to do that along the whole
Okay,
stretch?
Very well might. I've never seen it on a bike path, but if that became a concern, yeah, every 3 miles you could have a garbage can, and then everybody in town would dump in it, so that wouldn't last very long. So, no,
All right, a couple of people that haven't had a chance to speak yet have had their hands raised. Kelly, you have a comment?
Sure. I'm Kelly Graham. I'm a clerk in Oscoda Township. And
JD's getting really upset with everybody because nobody's using the podium. So could you use the podium? He's he's standing up and he's ready to jump out at us and kill us.
I'll keep this short.
Mary Jo got off because
Anyways, now I'm gonna be nervous, but,
just pretend you're sitting in your seat.
we've looked at this a couple different ways, you know, and everybody has their own opinion, you know, and I do realize that this is, the purpose of the bike path here is also a safe route for kids, not just for a scenic route for the bicyclists. But we did talk about getting people into town here to use our bike path, and we'd like to make it as scenic as we possibly can for them. And taking it through the cemetery and then through McQuaig and National Forest, I mean, it doesn't get any better than that. Not only that, but then it kind of groups our trailheads together with the snowmobiles and the ORVs. They're all right there on Grass Lake. The horse trail is just across Old 23 from there, so we've got kind of a real mecca of trails coming together in that area there at Grass Lake. The other thing that we haven't mentioned yet is what do you think about kids riding their bikes across all those driveways and people backing out of their driveways?
They do it now. Now they're gonna have a path to ride on.
Okay, that was just something that we thought about, you know.
I did it all growing up.
Yeah. Okay. So, you know, you either look at it one way or you look at, you know, the kids' safe route, or you think about it as a scenic bike path. So that's kind of where we're at. And, you know, we did have issues with thinking about our constituents there in Osable and wondering how they would like that going across their driveways, and we thought, well, we'll check out a different alternate route, and that's how we came upon that.
here we are. It's been quite the discussion, hasn't it?
Yes, it has. No, I know what you mean, as far as people backing out of their driveways, and, you know, you're just kind of tuned into not really gearing to paying attention
it's
until you
tight.
get to the end of your driveway.
It's tight there.
Yeah.
You know, there's not a lot of
Would that lead to
parking.
libel, Jim?
Pardon me?
Would that leave the township liable if somebody got hurt on this new bike path?
I'm not
because
sure of that. I'm not sure.
I mean, think about the neighborhoods with sidewalks. Go anywhere in the US and there are sidewalks to
Everywhere.
neighborhoods and everybody backs up and you just get used to it. These people have never had sidewalks there. So this would be something that if the path went that way, they would have to get used to. I mean, you're acting like it's some huge different thing than a sidewalk in any neighborhood, in any town. There's sidewalks everywhere and people don't back over kids every day. I mean, I don't, one thought though with the route, the cemetery route, with McQuaig Park right there, and it may be too late to put it in the plan, but it could be something to look at. What if there were a spur coming down the power line right away, I would say to the east of the old tennis courts, but behind the cemetery, where people could possibly park in McQuaig at the trailhead that we've discussed and go up and then go?
Definitely.
I mean, is that something that we could do
Definitely,
now, or maybe
yes.
something down the road? And maybe people would park there and they might go into town, they
Yeah.
might go head out towards Lumberman's Monument, but we're gonna,
That is
or
that
you
trail.
guys are gonna market it as a trailhead. I mean, we have the ORV trail, snowmobile trail, why not market it in the
Yeah.
summer as
We've
the
got a
bicycle
huge-
trailhead?
Huge parking lot in
Yeah.
there that can be used
Yeah.
for.
I mean, that's something maybe to look at, and then it would just go up towards, Northern Truck, and then they could go either way from there. Possibility.
And there's a ton of possibilities. It's
Yeah.
just endless.
Anything else for
No,
Kelly?
unless anybody has any other questions.
Okay, thank you very much. Just a comment, and then it'll be Jeff's turn, but real quick. I think most people familiar with the cemetery know that as you drive in the cemetery on your right, that is a religious affiliated cemetery. It's a little bit separate as far as administration or who's buried there and so forth. And it's kind of like a 2/3, 1/3, or 3/4, 1/4, whatever. And I have touched base with the lead clerical person that's connected with the religious affiliated, and that person has no problem with the bike path going through the cemetery. In fact, kind of likes the idea, but I don't want to put words in anybody's mouth, but that's the impression I got in a conversation earlier today, fresh. So I don't know if that makes any effect on anybody, if anybody's concerned about that issue, but that's my information. So,
Bill,
Jeff?
Bill, real quick, how long is that road, do you know? That goes to the cemetery? Mhm.
That's gotta be a quarter of a mile.
Yeah.
At the most, at the most.
Go ahead.
Jeff Lamrock. I am one of the property owners along the proposed route there. Not real crazy about it. I am all for the bike path, by the way. I was always under the impression it was gonna follow River Road. My take on it is the kids in Aldersgate, kids in Silver Sands, they'd have a safe route to get from that point into town. If it goes behind our houses, it is, for me, it's a privacy issue. I'm 50 feet, less than 50 feet from my back door to my property line. I did see when I was down in Alma, as Bill said, in other communities, there is a nice bike path there, the Fred Meyer bike path. It's a pretty considerable green belt between the path and the homes there. I do not know how close this is to my house. My concern also in the wintertime is the snowmobiles going down there. It's a path, they're gonna use it, they're gonna blast right down there. They currently do not go through our backyard. I have pets, my neighbors have pets. Somebody was just in the backyard the other night with a camera, checking it out. Whether it was somebody on any committee, I don't know. My dogs went crazy. It was dusk time. I don't believe the litter thing is so much of an issue, but if it does go back there, There is still no route on River Road for the kids to get to town. They're still gonna use River Road. We're still gonna dodge those kids. I've heard then possibly doing sidewalks, so if the path goes there, sidewalks go there, you're spending money twice. I just don't, I don't see if it's just going back there, it's gonna be really usable for all of our residents here in the town. It might do good for tourists coming up. Maybe it will, maybe it won't. I would just hate for the community and the taxpayers to spend that kind of money and then have that area not utilized, and they're still gonna be on River Road. So that's my take on it. Thanks.
Thank you, Jeff. Yes, sir.
I'm Pete Simpson. I'm Jeff's neighbor, not quite as far back, but I pretty much agree with what he said. One thing I wanted to add, besides the snowmobile infiltration, and I've had this in my backyard directly, cutting through my right-of-way, ORVs that take the snowmobile trail between McQuaig Park and Grass Lake Road. They come through that state forest land all the time. Whether or not the gate's closed, there's multiple ways they can get in there. And like Jeff said, they're gonna be on that path. Excuse me. I've noticed a large influx of kids and adults walking and riding on River Road in the last 5 to 10 years. Again, I see them using the road even if the path is put back in this green belt, per se. Another thing that we talked about, I've been attending the trail meetings every month. There's no lighting back there. There's lighting on River Road, the whole length. That's a safety concern. And I think that about covers it. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Pete.
That's one of the concerns I've heard too, is that there's no lighting back there.
Would there be bicycle use of the path at a time when you need lighting? Jeff? Jeff, at night?
You don't know?
I've run across bikers on River Road in the evening with no lights on their bikes.
Jeff Matthews, Oscoda County Parks and Recreation Chairman. I'm also the Vice Chairman of the Bike Path Committee. And I just, through conversation on our County Parks Board, County Park Board favors the River Road route for reasons that were stated through the cemetery. Respect is one thing, and funeral services. It's been my experience with the path after it leaves the cemetery, as Mr. Simpson said, there's been some misuse of that area with ORV and snowmobile. I've managed the ORV and snowmobile trails for close to 15 years now, and that has been the case in that particular area. Also, at our last meeting, last Thursday afternoon, the Bike Path Committee voted to stay with the proposed route along River Road. It was unfortunately that Oscoda was not present during that meeting, but that's what the group consensus was to stay along the proposed route. I will probably reiterate what Jeff and Pete said. As far as along River Road, you have Aldersgate subdivision. All roads from the Silver Sands subdivision come out to River Road. If you have children probably living within half a block of River Road, on the Silver Sands sub, they're going to come out to River Road and either go to town or they're going to go to the school down River Road. That's my gut. That's what tells me it's the shortest point to get to where you're going. You have a Aldersgate, which is an income subsidized rental housing there with lower income folks. Not only do I believe you probably have a younger group there, but you also have young adults that would be seeking employment in Oscoda and using that route for their jobs. That way, you know, I don't think they're gonna go around Silver Sands, go to the back, through McQuaig Park, and through the cemetery to access town. They're gonna take the route directly to Oscoda or to the school. So that's one consideration. I understand Kelly and Mary Jo's idea that it's a nice route, it's scenic. Also, I think the access is a very important issue also. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Jeff. Well, we've talked about this quite a bit. So to bring matters to a head, it's 9:05. I'm going to make a motion that we follow Osable's suggestion and use the cemetery route, just so we can get a vote and see what's going on here. And I don't know if I'm gonna get support for that motion or not. Support. Okay. Buyer.
What was the
and Lee.
motion?
The motion is to follow Osable's suggestion or request as evidenced in this letter,
And use the cemetery
And
route.
go through
and
the
use
cemetery?
the cemetery route that they propose. Just so we can kind
Still
of.
think it should be tabled and more discussion.
We
We
can't.
can't table it because tomorrow
They
they
gotta
have to.
know.
They have to know, sir. Okay, so there are gonna be people that are happy or unhappy. I'm not still sure I'm not happy, but I want to, you know, get a vote here. So, roll call, please.
Ms. McGuire?
No.
Mr. Hinckley?
No.
Ms. Carrasco, no. Mr. Weed?
No.
Mr. Byer?
No. Okay.
I'll make a motion that we go with the original proposed plan that follows River Road.
Support.
And that's Ms. McGuire with Mr. Hinckley's support.
I'm not sure if we have jurisdiction over that.
Well, can we just say we
We support.
prefer?
We support.
Yeah, we
the-
support the River Road. I mean, we can't tell them where to
Yeah, we
go,
don't.
but.
I
Right,
mean, we don't. It's Osable Township. So.
okay.
Hope everybody understands here that the cemetery is under our purview. That even though the cemetery is located in Osable Township, by a quirk of history, it is owned by Oscoda Township. So we really have the muscle on deciding whether to use the cemetery or not, so. Okay.
So
Roll
this is
call.
saying we support the River
We
Road
support
plan.
the-
Okay, Mr. Hinckley?
Yes.
Ms. McGuire?
Yes.
Ms. Carrasco, yes. Mr. Weed?
Yes.
Mr. Byer?
Yes. Motion carried. Okay. Then the next item under other is proposed zoning ordinance amendments.
Yes, we have a communication from our zoning administrator, who is in attendance this evening, and has been very patient, relative to several potential ordinance amendments. The first would involve section 4.14B2 in the general business district, where multiple family dwellings would be added as a special land use. Section 4.15 Wordsmith Business District, warehouses and distribution centers would be added as a special land use. And under section 6.2.1 paragraph 3, changes were made to several conditions relating to accessory structures. And I've provided a copy of the current ordinance that's in effect for purposes of comparison in outlining what's being proposed, or contrasting what's being proposed with what we have now. And I think Lauren is prepared to provide a brief overview, if you'd like her to do that, as to those changes.
So, Laura.
I would. You sat here all this time.
Wake up.
Okay, as, the, changes to the ordinance, 6.2.1, sections A, C, E, F, and I. The first change was a typographical error on the spelling of the word principal.
And that's,
And
what letter is that?
A. I'm sorry. So it says the nearest part of the accessory structure's foundation shall not be closer than 10 feet to any principal structure's foundation. The second part of the change of A was the addition of the wording "or to any other accessory structure." Down to C, the maximum height was 17 feet and it's now 20 feet. It's the proposed change. And in E, the previous ratio was 2.1 relating to length versus the width of the structure. Proposed change would read 3-to-1 ratio. In F, the maximum size was 1,200 square feet and now 1,600 square feet is the change. And then all the way down the bottom to I, the required overhang used to be 6 inches and now it's 1 foot of overhang on each side.
And where did these changes originate? Where did they start? Who proposed these?
We've had people apply for permits and we had to disallow.
Mm-hmm.
And it was mostly to allow the residents to build an accessory structure large enough to store their own recreational vehicles or boats, that type thing.
But my question is, I understand, people have come to the township or some aspect or part of the township and been turned down. But I think I know the answer to the question. The Planning Commission originated these changes?
Oh, yes. It was all drafted by the Planning Commission.
Okay.
And then it was read to the public and it was brought back and was voted upon.
Mm-hmm.
It was actually voted upon here before.
Mm-hmm.
Then we sent the information for review and comment to the county.
Mm-hmm.
And their time has elapsed and I received no objections.
Okay.
So now we're just bringing it to the board
Mm-hmm.
for a final read. And if it were to be approved tonight, then it would go into effect 8 days from today.
Okay. Anybody have any questions or comments?
Do you know why the restriction on square footage is 1,600 feet?
Why it was increased to that exact amount?
Why it was limited to 1,600 square feet?
Not exactly. There was a lot of discussion, and that's just what they had come up with, 1,600 square feet. They thought it was large enough to store like a pontoon or whatever you needed to.
Do you recall roughly when the Planning Commission passed this, was it a split vote or unanimous? Or?
But this was a unanimous vote.
Okay. Okay. Anything else?
No.
Well, we have a motion to accept these changes.
I'll move we accept the changes as
Support.
presented.
Okay. Motion by Mr. Hinckley with support from Mr. Weed that we do accept the recommended changes. Roll call, please.
Ms. McGuire?
Yes.
Mr. Hinckley?
Yes.
Mr. Weed?
Yes.
Ms. Carrasco, yes. Mr. Byer?
Yes. Motion carried. Thank you. Okay, canoe marathon ad.
No action required as indicated, but the board had approved an ad at the last meeting on behalf of the township, and what we discovered when we went to submit it is that they required color pictures, and the pictures in the top and bottom of the ad were black and white, and we had no color versions. So I believe the middle picture was in the original ad, but the top and bottom pictures are different than what you folks saw before, and we wanted to point that out. But it was sort of a matter of urgency in terms of making some substitutes and getting it in for publication.
Okay. Well, then next is Budziak Drive.
Yes, we have the local road improvement agreement back from Oscoda County. It appears to be consistent with previous discussion and authorization, so approval is being sought for the supervisor and clerk to execute the document.
So moved.
Okay.
Support.
Moved by Mr. Hinckley with support from Ms. McGuire that we do go ahead with this Budziak Drive plan. Roll call, please.
Mr. Weed?
Yes.
Mr. Hinckley?
Yes.
Ms. Krasko, yes. Ms. McGuire?
Yes.
Mr. Byer?
Yes, motion carried. All right, I think we're at the second public comment. Yes, sir.
I'll make this quick. I would just like to comment on the Iosco County EMS. I have been on the County EMS Committee for approximately 15 years, and I also sit on Iosco County Med Control, which governs all the ambulances and first responders in Iosco County. I would like to invite Ms. McGuire to come down maybe at our second monthly meeting of the Board of Commissioners when EMS gives their annual or their monthly report, and sit down and discuss with us her concerns and also see why we make the decisions and why the county EMS is run the way it is. I'd like to thank Oscoda and Osable Townships for our discussions on adding additional ambulance services. At the meeting you attended, Mr. Byer, we voted to increase, put on a 5th ambulance for 8 hours a day. At the committee of the whole that was discussed at the final board meeting, I asked them to increase that to 10 hours a day for the 5th ambulance, which was adopted. So we will have, that should make a difference in the overall county ambulance coverage, because we'll be able to move and rotate with an extra rig during peak hours is when that will happen. So, but if you could please join us, Jamie, that'd be great.
I'd love to.
I would like to join that also.
Okay,
No.
good. We'd be happy to have you.
He only
Thank
wants
you.
Jamie.
Thank you, Jeff. And thank you for the extra 2 hours of coverage, Jeff.
I worked a long time on getting that.
Okay, anyone else? Anybody else? All right. We wore you out at 20 after 9. So. Okay, board comments. Mr. Hinckley had an item.
Our work session scheduled for 5 o'clock on April 1st with parent-teacher conferences that night from 4 to 7. Would it bother anyone to move that back to 2 or 3 in the afternoon?
Nope.
I'd be happy to do that.
2 o'clock, I would say.
2?
2?
All right.
That's great.
Sure, that's gonna be another
Okay.
2-hour work session.
I'll be out there in 2 hours. I don't care how long you guys go. I'll
I'm
go
right
with
behind
3
you.
actually, but do we need a motion on that, Bob, to change it?
Yeah.
All right, I'll move that we change the work session time to 2 o'clock on April 1st.
Support.
Just a minute.
Mr. Hinckley, Mr. Weed. 2 o'clock instead of 5. Roll call when ready.
I'm getting there.
Huh? Take your time.
Ms. McGuire?
Yes.
Mr. Weed?
Yes.
Ms. Krasko, yes. Mr. Hinckley?
Yes.
Mr. Byer?
Yes. Okay,
My turn?
yes, it is your turn.
I just wanted to thank Osable Township too for all the hard work they put into trying to find alternate paths through River Road and the cemetery and everywhere around. I know that it took a lot of time and effort, and I do appreciate that.
Yeah, I agree with you. There's no clear-cut deal. They had some very good reasons. And, I mean, I agree. Thank you for saying that. So. All right.
Me. Just again to remind everybody, we've got an election coming up. If you want an absentee ballot, you can call our office, come into our office, fill out the application. Once we get the ballots ready to go, we'll mail them right out to you. Easy peasy. So I encourage everyone, get an absentee ballot.
Chris,
Yes?
what items are on this election?
There are the changing the 6-cent sales tax to 7 cents,
Yeah, me
the swimming pool millage, and the Iosco, what is it, the Iosco Transit? Yeah. So there are 3 items on there.
The pool also includes the track too, not just the pool.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, I guess, real quick, I just would draw the board's attention to the latest Oscoda Ensemble Community Profile Membership Directory. There's kind of a decent picture on the cover that you might be interested in.
There is a decent.
The Jim Beyer Memorial Pier.
Yes. Or the Beyer Boondoggle Line. So, anyway, I wish I had that kind of power, but unfortunately I don't.
Only in your own mind.
Looking for a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
Thank you, we are adjourned.